A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
Well, Herman, things have certainly taken a turn over the last 10 days. I was sitting on the porch yesterday, just looking out toward the north, and you could almost feel the shift in the air. It is not just the usual hum of the city anymore. There is a different kind of tension when a ceasefire that everyone hoped would hold finally gives way to something this massive. We are sitting here on March 12, 2026, and the silence of that November 2024 agreement feels like a lifetime ago.
Herman Poppleberry here, and you are exactly right, Corn. The mood in Jerusalem is heavy, but there is also a sense of resolve. That March 2nd strike on the missile defense site near Haifa was the breaking point. When Hezbollah targeted our defensive infrastructure so directly, they knew exactly what kind of response they were inviting. They did not just fire a few rockets into an open field, they went after the very shield that protects northern Israel. And now, with Operation Roaring Lion fully underway, we are seeing the most significant shift in Northern Command doctrine that we have witnessed in years. Our friend Daniel sent us a prompt about this very transition, wanting us to look past the headlines and really dissect what is happening with Hezbollah's capabilities right now.
It is a timely one from Daniel because the scale of Roaring Lion is unprecedented. We are not just talking about a few retaliatory strikes anymore. We have got 4 full divisions, the 36th, 91st, 146th, and the 210th, all actively engaged in deep ground and air incursions. This is a fundamental change from the containment strategy of the past. But what really strikes me, Herman, is the resilience of the threat. We have been hearing about the destruction of Hezbollah's infrastructure for 16 months now, yet they still manage that precision strike on Haifa. It brings up what you have been calling the arsenal paradox. How is this still happening?
That is the core of the issue, Corn. If you look at the raw numbers, the Israel Defense Forces have done incredible work. Before the major escalations began, estimates put Hezbollah's total inventory at roughly 150,000 rockets and missiles. Today, the best data we have from the Alma Research Center suggests that number is down to about 25,000. In any traditional military sense, a loss of over 80% of your primary ordnance would be considered a total collapse. But the paradox is that Hezbollah is not a traditional military, and their rate of rehabilitation is currently outpacing our interdiction efforts. Even with 25,000 projectiles left, that is still a larger arsenal than most sovereign nations in Europe possess.
Wait, let me stop you there for a second. Outpacing. After all the sorties, the targeted strikes on warehouses in the Dahya, and the operations in the Bekaa Valley, they are actually rebuilding faster than we can blow things up. That sounds almost impossible given the level of surveillance the Israel Defense Forces maintain over Lebanon. I mean, we have drones in the air 24/7, we have satellite imagery, and we have human intelligence on the ground. How do they move a single bolt without us seeing it?
It sounds impossible until you look at the shift in their logistics. This is where the technical details get really interesting. For years, Hezbollah relied on what we called the Syrian land bridge. Huge convoys of Iranian hardware would come through Iraq, into Syria, and across the border into Lebanon. But after the events of December 2024, that land bridge effectively collapsed. The instability in Syria and the constant Israel Defense Forces pressure on the border crossings made that route too expensive and too risky. So, Hezbollah did what they always do, they adapted. They pivoted away from being a mere warehouse for Iranian goods and turned toward a model of domestic self-sufficiency and maritime smuggling. They are no longer waiting for the truck, they are building the workshop.
So, instead of waiting for a finished missile to arrive on a truck from Damascus, they are bringing in the components through smaller, harder-to-track maritime routes, and then assembling or repairing them in-country. It is like the difference between buying a pre-built computer and ordering the parts on the internet to build it yourself in your basement.
The Badr unit, which used to be focused primarily on logistics and firepower in the Biquaya Valley, has transformed into a decentralized network of production and repair hubs. We are talking about small-scale facilities, sometimes as small as a double garage tucked into civilian neighborhoods or buried deep under residential buildings. They are not manufacturing entire missiles from scratch. They do not have the industrial capacity for that, but they are incredibly good at what we call kit bashing. They take older, unguided rockets, the kind of dumb ordnance they have had for decades, and they fit them with GPS guidance sets or solid fuel boosters that are much easier to smuggle in small quantities. A box of guidance chips is much easier to hide on a fishing boat than a 20-foot missile.
That explains why the interdiction is so difficult. You can hit a massive warehouse, but hitting 100 separate garages across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa is a much more complex intelligence challenge. It is a game of whack-a-mole where the moles are invisible until they pop up to fire. And I suppose this connects to the strategic difference between how Iran views these weapons and how Hezbollah actually uses them. We talked about this a bit back in episode 757, but it seems even more relevant now. Iran seems to be playing a long game of regional chess, while Hezbollah is playing a game of local attrition.
It is a critical distinction. Iran views its ballistic missile program as a strategic regional deterrent. For the regime in Tehran, those missiles are about survival, about making sure that any attack on the Iranian mainland results in a catastrophic cost for the aggressor. They are long-range, high-yield assets meant for a grand strategic chess game. But for Hezbollah, the mission is different. They are the tactical attrition arm of the axis of resistance. Their goal is not necessarily to win a decisive military victory in the traditional sense, but to make northern Israel unlivable. They do not need to destroy the Israel Defense Forces, they just need to make sure the people of Kiryat Shmona never feel safe enough to unpack their bags.
Right, and that is the asymmetry of purpose we keep seeing. The Israel Defense Forces is looking to neutralize the threat, to destroy the launchers and the personnel so the residents of the north can finally go home. But Hezbollah's metric of success is simply the displacement of those civilians. If they can keep a steady stream of short-range, unguided rockets falling on northern towns, they are winning in their eyes. It does not matter if 90% of them are intercepted by Iron Dome or fall in open fields. The psychological toll, the economic disruption, and the fact that tens of thousands of Israelis are still living in hotels away from their homes, that is the victory condition for Naim Qassem and his leadership. They are weaponizing inconvenience and fear.
And that brings us to the most dangerous part of the current inventory, those 1,000 long-range, precision-capable missiles. We are talking about the Fateh 110 and the M600. These are not the dumb rockets that just fly in a general direction. These are sophisticated weapons with a range of up to 300 kilometers and circular error probabilities that allow them to hit specific buildings. The fact that Hezbollah has kept roughly 1,000 of these in reserve, even during Operation Roaring Lion, is the ultimate escalation ladder. It is the sword of Damocles hanging over central Israel.
Why haven't they used them yet? I mean, if they have the capability to hit strategic targets in Tel Aviv or power plants in central Israel, why hold back when the Israel Defense Forces is currently operating deep inside Lebanese territory? Is it just fear of a total Israeli response, or is there a deeper tactical reason? It feels like they are holding their best cards while their house is being raided.
It is a combination of things. First, you have to remember that these long-range systems are much harder to hide and much harder to launch than a small Grad rocket. They require specialized transporter erector launchers and a more significant launch signature that the Israel Air Force is hunting for 24/7. But more importantly, those 1,000 missiles are Hezbollah's insurance policy. They are the break glass in case of emergency reserve. If they fire them all now and fail to achieve a knockout blow, they lose their primary leverage against a full-scale Israeli march on Beirut. They are using the threat of those missiles to try and dictate the limits of Roaring Lion.
So, it is a high-stakes game of chicken. They are saying you can push into the south, but if you cross this specific line or target this specific leader, the Fateh 110 start flying toward the Kiryat in Tel Aviv. But then you have to look at what happened yesterday, March 11th. Lieutenant General Ilzamir made a move that suggests Israel is not intimidated by that particular threat. The redeployment of the Golani Brigade is a massive signal. Herman?
It is a massive signal, Korn. Taking one of the most storied and battle-hardened infantry units in the Israel Defense Forces and moving them from the Gaza front up to the Northern Command is not something you do just for show. The Golani soldiers are specialists in the kind of difficult, close-quarters terrain you find in southern Lebanon. They know how to fight in the thick brush and the rocky hills. By moving them now, Eyal Zamir is signaling that the Israel Defense Forces is preparing for the possibility that air power and limited incursions won't be enough. It is a precursor to a potential major ground offensive that would aim to physically clear those launch sites that the Air Force can't reach. It is moving from mowing the grass to pulling the weeds by the roots.
It feels like we are moving toward a definitive conclusion of the polite fiction we discussed in episode 954. For a long time, the world tried to pretend that the Lebanese state was a separate entity from Hezbollah, that there was some kind of state-within-a-state dynamic. But as Roaring Lion progresses, it is becoming clear that it is more like a state within a ruin. The Lebanese government has zero agency here. Hezbollah has effectively cannibalized the national infrastructure for its own survival. They use the civilian ports, the civilian airports, and the civilian roads as their own personal military logistics network.
And that is why the maritime smuggling routes I mentioned earlier are so crucial to monitor. As the Israel Defense Forces continues to squeeze the land border and the internal Lebanese supply lines, the Mediterranean becomes Hezbollah's only real lung. We have seen reports of Iranian commercial vessels making unusual stops or offloading cargo to smaller fishing boats off the coast of Tyre and Sidon. These are not massive container ships, they are small, nondescript vessels that blend into the local traffic. If the international community, and specifically our allies, aren't helping to police those waters, we are essentially trying to drain a bathtub while the faucet is still running. The sea is the new front line of the logistics war.
That is a vivid image, Herman, and it really highlights the challenge of this kind of asymmetric warfare. You have a highly motivated, decentralized militia that doesn't care about the well-being of the local population, and they are fighting against a modern state that has to weigh every tactical move against international law, domestic politics, and the safety of its own citizens. It is a mismatch in terms of moral constraints, which Hezbollah exploits at every turn. They place their kit-bashing workshops in the basements of apartment buildings because they know it makes the targeting process a nightmare for the Israel Defense Forces.
And when you look at the Radwan unit, Hezbollah's elite offensive force, their entire doctrine is built on that exploitation. They aren't just there to defend, they are trained for cross-border raids, for taking Israeli towns hostage. Even though the Israel Defense Forces has dealt them significant blows over the last 16 months, the core of that capability remains. This is why the Golani redeployment is so significant. You need that level of infantry expertise to root out Radwan fighters from the tunnels and the fortified villages they have spent decades preparing. You can't do that from 30,000 feet. You have to go door to door, tunnel to tunnel.
It makes me wonder about the long-term endgame here. If Hezbollah's goal is displacement and attrition, and Israel's goal is a return to normalcy for the north, how do those two ever meet? It seems like we are in a cycle where the only way to achieve the Israeli goal is a total military defeat of Hezbollah, which is a much larger undertaking than anything we have seen so far. Are we looking at a multi-year occupation, or is there a way to break the cycle without staying in Lebanon forever?
It is the fundamental question of this conflict, Korn, and it is why Operation Roaring Lion is such a departure from the past. The Israel Defense Forces is essentially saying that the old status quo, the quiet for quiet model that led to the November ceasefire, is dead. That model allowed Hezbollah to build the very arsenal we are now having to dismantle. The new doctrine seems to be about creating a physical reality on the ground where Hezbollah cannot return to the border regardless of what any diplomatic agreement says. It is about creating a buffer zone that is enforced by presence, not just by promises.
Which brings us back to the Arsenal paradox and the Alma Research Center's findings. If they are rebuilding faster than we are destroying, then the only way to win is to change the environment they are rebuilding in. You have to take the ground. You have to disrupt the small garages, the hidden labs, and the smuggling piers. It is a grueling, slow-motion process. It is not the lightning war that people often expect from the Israel Defense Forces. It is a war of inches and intelligence.
Right, and it requires a tremendous amount of national patience. We are talking about a sustained military effort that could last months, if not longer. And during that time, the threat of those 1,000 long-range missiles will always be hanging over our heads. It is a test of nerves as much as it is a test of military hardware. Naim Qassem is betting that Israeli society will crack under the pressure of constant sirens and economic disruption. He thinks we don't have the stomach for a long war. We are betting that our military can dismantle his capabilities faster than he can replenish them, and that our society is resilient enough to see it through.
I think one thing that often gets lost in the international coverage of this is just how tactical and decentralized Hezbollah has become. People see these big maps with arrows and think it is like the conventional wars of the 20th century. But when you are dealing with the Badr unit and their localized production, you are essentially fighting 1,000 tiny wars simultaneously, one garage at a time, one drone workshop at a time. It is a granular kind of conflict. It is not about capturing a capital city. It is about capturing a supply chain.
That is a great point. And it is also why the intelligence aspect is so vital. We aren't just looking for tank divisions, we are looking for specific individuals who have the technical knowledge to assemble these guidance kits. We are looking for the financial networks that pay for the solid fuel components. It is a full spectrum effort, and honestly, it is where the Israel Defense Forces has shown some of its most impressive capabilities lately. The precision of the strikes during the initial phase of Roaring Lion was a masterclass in intelligence-led warfare. They were hitting targets that Hezbollah thought were completely secret.
But as you said, the faucet is still running. And that brings us to the role of Iran in all of this. We talked in episode 766 about the axis of resistance and how it has evolved into a vertically integrated military architecture. When we see Hezbollah pivoting to maritime smuggling and domestic production, we shouldn't assume they are doing it alone. This is an Iranian-designed strategy. Tehran is the one providing the blueprints, the specialized components, and the training for these decentralized workshops. They are the architects of this resilient model.
Hezbollah is the proxy, but the strategy is sovereign, Iranian doctrine. They want to create a situation where their proxies are self-sustaining, making them much harder to eliminate through traditional interdiction. It is a way of outsourcing the wall of fire, so that Iran itself remains untouched while its enemies are bled dry by 1,000 small cuts. They are willing to fight to the last Lebanese civilian to keep their strategic goals intact.
It is a cynical strategy, but you have to admit it is effective. It forces Israel to spend billions on defense and mobilization, while Hezbollah can keep the pressure on with relatively cheap, kit-bashed rockets. But that is where the Golani redeployment changes the math. If you can't stop the rockets through interdiction alone, you have to remove the person holding the launcher. And that is a very different kind of war. It is a war that requires boots on the ground and a willingness to engage in the most difficult kind of combat.
It is the most difficult kind of war, and it is one that the Poppleberry brothers will be watching very closely. I think the next few weeks will be telling. If we see a move toward a full ground offensive, we will know that the Israel Defense Forces has decided that the arsenal paradox can only be solved through physical occupation of the launch zones. The political and military bandwidth required for that is immense, especially with the ongoing situation in Gaza, but the Haifa strike may have left Israel with no other choice.
It is a sobering thought, but it is the reality we are living in here in Jerusalem. The sound of those jets isn't going away anytime soon. I think we have covered a lot of ground today, Herman. From the technical shifts in Hezbollah's logistics to the strategic implications of the Golani redeployment. It is a complex picture, and I am glad we could dive into the nuances that the mainstream media often misses. We are looking at the evolution of proxy warfare under extreme pressure.
Me too, Korn. It is important for people to understand that this isn't just a repeat of past conflicts. The technology has changed, the logistics have changed, and the stakes have never been higher. If you want to understand the why behind the headlines, you have to look at these second-order effects like the collapse of the Syrian land bridge and the rise of decentralized production. You have to understand that 25,000 rockets is still a massive threat when they are being upgraded with precision kits.
And for our listeners who want to go deeper into the history of these units and the Iranian connection, I highly recommend checking out episode 941 on the missile frontiers and episode 757 on the command structure. They provide a lot of the baseline knowledge that makes today's discussion even more impactful. We've been tracking this for a long time, and seeing it all come to a head like this is both fascinating and terrifying.
And if you are finding these deep dives helpful, please take a moment to leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It really does help other people find the show and join the conversation. We appreciate the support more than we can say. We are trying to provide clarity in a very noisy world.
Definitely. You can also find all of our past episodes, our RSS feed, and a contact form at myweirdprompts.com. And if you want to stay updated in real time, search for My Weird Prompts on Telegram. We post there every time a new episode drops, which is especially important during fast-moving situations like Operation Roaring Lion. We are trying to keep up with the pace of events as best we can.
Well said, Corn. This has been a heavy one, but an important one. We are living through history right now, and trying to make sense of it is what we do. Thanks to Daniel for the prompt that got us started on this today. It really forced us to look at the data from the Alma Research Center in a new light. It is a lot to process, but I think we are better off for having looked at the details.
I agree. It is about clarity in a time of chaos. All right, Herman, I think that is a wrap for today. The sun is starting to set, and I can hear the distant rumble of the transport planes. It is going to be a long night.
Until next time, this has been My Weird Prompts. Stay safe, everyone. Keep your eyes on the horizon and your ears open.
Take care.
You know, Corn, before we completely sign off, I was thinking about that Alma Research Center data again, the 25,000 rockets. It is such a specific number, but it is also a reminder of how much work is left to do. Even if we get that number down to 5,000, if those 5,000 are all precision guided, the threat to our cities remains immense. The quality versus quantity shift is the real story here.
That is the quality versus quantity shift we are seeing. In the past, it was about overwhelming the Iron Dome with sheer volume. Now, it is about finding the one or two gaps in the armor with a precision strike. It requires a completely different defensive mindset. We are not just looking at the sky anymore. We are looking at the specific trajectories and the guidance signatures. It is a technological arms race happening in real time.
And that is why the technical expertise within the Israel Defense Forces is our greatest asset. It is a battle of wits as much as a battle of weapons. The engineers and the intelligence analysts are just as much on the front line as the Golani soldiers moving north. It is a whole-of-nation effort. Every piece of data, every intercepted signal, it all counts towards solving the paradox.
It really is. And I think that is a good place to leave it. The resilience of the people here, combined with the technical edge of our military, is what will ultimately see us through. We have faced these threats before, and we have adapted. This time will be no different, even if the challenge is more complex.
Amen to that. All right, let's head out. I think I need a very large cup of coffee before we start prepping for the next update.
See you at home, Herman.
See you there.
And for everyone listening, thanks for sticking with us through this deep dive. We know it is a lot of technical detail, but this is the stuff that matters. This is how you understand the world as it actually is, not just as it is presented in a 30-second news clip. You have to look at the Bodder unit, the maritime routes, and the solid fuel boosters.
Knowledge is the best defense against fear. We will keep digging as long as there are questions to answer. We will keep looking for the why behind the what.
That is the Poppleberry Promise. Talk to you soon.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
One more thing, Corn. I noticed you didn't mention your sloth-like approach to the research this morning. You were actually quite quick on the draw with those division numbers. I was impressed.
Well, even a sloth moves fast when there is a lion roaring in the north, Herman. It is amazing what a little bit of existential tension can do for your productivity.
Ha, fair enough. And this donkey is ready to keep pulling the weight. Let's go. We have a lot more data to sift through before the morning briefing.
Let's go.
Seriously, though, the 36th and the 91st Divisions are doing some incredible work in the central sector. The way they are coordinating with the Air Force to hit those concealed launchers is something we should probably do a whole other episode on. The level of integration is something we haven't seen since the 2024 maneuvers.
Maybe next time, Herman. Let's let the listeners digest this one first. It is a lot to take in. We have covered the logistics, the strategy, and the tactical shifts. That is enough for one day.
You are right. One step at a time. We don't want to overwhelm the audience with too much nerdery at once.
One step at a time.
Okay, now we are really leaving. I am putting my coat on.
For real this time. I am turning the lights off.
Bye.
Bye.
Actually, did I mention the M600's specific engine configuration? It is actually a modified version of the Iranian Tandar 69, which gives it a much more stable flight path in high wind conditions.
Herman, save it for the next one. We are out of time.
Right. Next time. Bye.
Okay,
I am going. I am at the door.
me too.
See ya.
See ya.
My weird prompts, signing off.
Signing off.
For real.
Yes, for real.
Okesh.
Okay?
Bye.
Bye.
You know, the solid fuel aspect is really the key to the rapid launch capability. It means they don't have to spend 45 minutes fueling the missile on the pad where they are vulnerable to airstrikes.
Herman, I am turning off the microphone. I am literally reaching for the switch.
Okay, I am done. Bye.
Bye.
Muffled. But the circular error probability is what makes the Haifa strike so significant.
Muffled Herman.
Muffled. Sorry. Bye.
Muffled. Good night, everyone.
Muffled. Good night.
Muffled. Seriously, check out the website.
MuffledMyWeirdPrompts.com.
Muffled. And the telegram.
Muffled. Yes, the telegram.
Muffled. Okay, now the light is off.
Muffled. Okay.
Muffled. Bye.
Muffled. Bye.
Muffled. Sloth out. Sloth out.
Muffled. Donkey out.
Muffled. Nice.
Muffled. Thanks.
Muffled. Okay, really done now.
Muffled. See ya.
Muffled. See ya.
Muffled. Wait, what about the anti-ship missiles, the C-802?
Muffled. Herman.
Muffled. Just kidding. Bye.
Muffled. You are impossible.
Fold. I know. Bye.
Muffled. Bye.
Muffled. Truly.
Muffled. Truly.
Muffled. Okay.
Muffled. Okay.
Muffled. Bye.
Muffled. Bye.
Muffled. Silence.
Muffled. Silence.
Muffled. 1,000 missiles.
Muffled. Geo to sleep.
Muffled. Okay. Good night.
Muffled. Good night.
Muffled. Bye.
Muffled. Bye.
Muffled. Fate 110.
Muffled. Sound of a door closing.
Muffled is a very reliable system.
Muffled. Silence.
Muffled. Okay. Now I am alone.
Muffled. Silence.
Muffled. Bye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts.